hard on Iran as soon as it was apparent that they were cracking down on their dissent, but doesn't seem to be as willing to come down hard on the other events that have been going on here. And they're wondering why.
Well, I think the president very much wants to see the same kind of democratic change that people in the region do, and I think is very encouraged by the success of the peaceful protests in Egypt and Tunisia, and would love to see democracy take root in a big way throughout the Arab world. That has been, I think, a part of his philosophy and the ideals that he ran for office on. I understand believe me, I understand the impatience of the people in the region, who for decades have been striving for this. And yes, the White House is playing catch-up, but we are all playing catch-up. I don't think the people in Egypt recognized what was happening until it was well underway. To think about what a Tunisian fruit vendor got started is absolutely almost beyond comprehension. So we're all struggling to keep up. But notwithstanding that, this is, I think, kind of a moment of truth where our ideals are on the line, and we have to really step up and say that the promotion of democracy, which we've always advocated, that we are willing to follow through with that. And we understand there are near and long-term risks. And let me just say this, as important as it is for us to be vocal now, the days ahead are going to be equally important as we support the transition in Egypt, as we support a transition in Libya, which frankly is going to be, I think, much more difficult and complicated than in places like Egypt and Tunisia. So there's a lot of hard work ahead of us.
Well, one final question. I mean, you're talking about strong words and you're talking about, being forceful in the rhetoric. But what about action? Because we heard Colonel Gaddafi last night talking about shedding blood. We heard him talking about a Tiananmen Square scenario. We heard him talking about dying a martyr in his own country. I mean, there was some fairly powerful stuff coming out. If we do see Gaddafi taking that kind of a line, strong words from Washington or anywhere else are not going to be enough, are they? Is there appetite in Congress for taking actual action, do you think?
I think there's appetite depending on, what Gaddafi chooses to do. But again, as we talked about earlier, it is essential that the United States not act alone in this. We have to act in concert with the international community. Otherwise, frankly, we will play to the Gaddafi narrative that this is a struggle of Gaddafi against the colonialists, Gaddafi against the United States, Gaddafi against the West. This is not about his struggle with the West. It's about, frankly, his struggle with his own people and his willingness to use violence against his own people to stay in power. But, if he is determined to put his country on the path of civil war, if he's committed to continuing to escalate the violence, then we, with the international community, must step up with sanctions. We must step up with a no-fly zone. We must do what's necessary to protect the life and liberty of those in other places and around the globe.
Congressman Adam Schiff in California, thank you for talking to us. Now, in other news, rescue efforts are continuing in New Zealand, where hundreds of people are still believed missing following Tuesday's earthquake that hit Christchurch. Hopes are fading that more survivors might be found, though. There have been more than 100 aftershocks, and both the airport and parts of the city hospital remain closed. Andrew Thomas reports.
The rescue efforts continue, but with each passing hour, hopes fade. Here, where there stood a 6-story building containing a TV station and a language school, now just smouldering rubble. There's no chance any more people can be pulled alive from here. Between 50 and 80 were inside when it fell. Elsewhere, though, there is still a faint chance more survivors can be found. At one city centre office block, a woman was pulled alive from the rubble after more than 25 hours trapped.
All right, we're going live back to Washington, D.C. Hillary Clinton of the State Department, apparently about to speak about his situation in Libya. Let's listen in.
And they're wondering, where is the United States at this moment? They're feeling abandoned. That's what they're telling us. Are sanctions in order here? A referral to the ICC for human rights violations? What about cutting off trade? What about putting Libya back on the state sponsor of terror list? Where is the United States, and what is it going to take for Washington to act? Thank you.
Well, maybe I can make a few comments here. First of all, Brazil is very concerned with the situation in Libya. We have a number of nationals working there through companies that have been involved in several infrastructure projects, including enlarging the airport at Tripoli. And at this point, without providing any details, I'm fairly encouraged that our efforts to provide a way out of the country for those who wish to depart will meet with success. This is our sincere hope. I must say that it is a positive feature within a very complex, problematic situation that so far we have not witnessed violence against foreigners in Libya. Having said that, we, of course, were in favor of addressing the situation at the Security Council. Yesterday, there was a press statement that came out, and as you know, Brazil is at the presidency of Security Council during the month of February. We've also associated ourselves with an initiative to call a meeting of the Human Rights Council to look at the situation in Libya. And differently from what happened in Egypt and Tunisia, what to us is a very worrying element here is the use of force against unarmed protesters. Otherwise, we see the manifestations in Northern Africa and the Arab world as a movement that can only elicit solidarity from the Brazilian people, in as much as it is a movement for better governance, more participation in decision-making, more job opportunity, a vision of a better future for the youth of these countries. And we would like to see, in whatever way possible, we can support their efforts towards these objectives.
Well, first, let me say I think that the United States, starting with what the President said on Friday, what I reiterated yesterday, have made it absolutely clear that we strongly condemn the violence in Libya, that we have called for an end to violence against protesters and those who are seeking the rights that are due to any people, anywhere. And we deeply regret the loss of life that has already occurred. We've joined with the international community to speak with one voice, because as your question implied, first we have to get the international community together, because there is no doubt in my mind that this is now the moment for the international community to act together. And to that end, we joined a very strong United Nations Security Council statement yesterday. We are consulting closely. The foreign minister and I spoke about this at great length during our meeting, because we are joining with the rest of the world in sending a clear message to the Libyan government that violence is unacceptable and that the Libyan government will be held accountable for the actions that it is taking. Now, the way that we will proceed in the Security Council and in the Human Rights Council is to come up with the best approaches that we think